Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional from Chicago, USA, Susan Barber. Susan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
Thank you. Susan is the president of Susan M Barber Coaching and Consulting. And she's an author, and all of you know, I've always been very, very partial to authors. She's an author of a book titled The Visibility Factor, and we'll talk about her book. And Susan has spent 25 years with Kraft Heinz. So, Susan, before we start talking about your book and coaching, tell me a little bit about your own journey.
Well, my journey, as you mentioned, I spent many years at one company, which is almost unheard of nowadays. Everybody moves companies, but as I was coming up through the ranks, I got opportunities to do a lot of different things at Kraft, which was so helpful. I worked in supply chain and sales and IT, and we did a lot of things around leadership. And that kind of, I don't know, it sold me on ways to help to give back to other people and to mentor them and guide them. And that's what got me into coaching eventually when I left the company.
Wonderful. So now let's talk about your book, The Visibility Factor. And I'm going to ask all our viewers and listeners to go and check out Susan Barber's book, The Visibility Factor, on Amazon and other places. I'll go and check it out as well. So Susan, tell me a little bit about your book and what was your hypothesis when you wrote it?
The idea behind the book is my own journey. At the beginning of my career, I was doing all the right things, right? I was working hard and getting everything done, but I didn't realize the importance of being visible and talking about the things that I was doing until I had a very interesting conversation with a mentor who told me, you need to be more visible. You need to not sit in the back of the room. You need to sit at the table. You need to share your ideas and recommendations, and you need to do that for your team. And so that was a big surprise to me because I was considered a top talent before that conversation. And I wondered, did I just mess up my career? Am I done? And so that set me off on the journey to learn about how to be visible in my own way and not like everyone else. And so that was the really plan behind the book, was to help other people learn how to do that too and create a plan for themselves that's authentic to them, that they can use in a way that's very natural for their style. And it's doing really well. I'm so excited to get it out there and help people learn how to do this too.
Fabulous. And, you also have, and when I was reading about you, I read about the RISE framework, the reflect, ideate, select, and evaluate. Tell me about this when it comes to leadership, and if possible, give me some examples.
Sure. So that is the 4-step process in the book to build your own visibility plan. And I wanted people to understand why they're building it. So that's the R, that's the reflect statement, which is actually the part that everyone loves the most when they get into it, because you don't usually slow down long enough to think about that for yourself. But I wanted people to slow down and think about why they want visibility, what they're going to do with it, come up with ideas, or there's hundreds of ideas in the book. And then select 2 or 3 to start with, and then evaluate as you go. How you can measure success and how you're going to manage that for yourself. But I realized that I'm using it when I coach people too. Like whenever you coach people, you start at a place wherever they are and try to help them reflect where they are and help you understand as a coach where they are. So I've had so many different examples of people who have grown with me over the years as a coach and a client relationship, and just seeing them just skyrocket in terms of getting promotions or moving to new companies. And they didn't think that was possible. And I like to operate in possibilities and help them think bigger.
Fascinating. And you focus more on women. Isn't visibility applicable to everybody?
Actually, I don't focus just on women. Honestly, it may feel that way because there's a lot of research on imposter syndrome that I talk about in the book, which is very focused on women. Unfortunately, when those words were created, the imposter syndrome, it was back in the 70s when women were just starting in the workforce. And now there has been much more research actually around all people, that it impacts all people and holds them back from doing great things in their career. And so I did have to talk about that research because that's the first place where it started. But I coached men and women, and they all have it in some way, shape, or form, and they all can benefit from visibility for sure.
You also state that career success is 10%, related to performance, 30% to image, and 60% to exposure. Help me
Mhm.
understand this, and what was really the basis of a lot of these percentages?
So that actually comes from a book by Harvey Coleman called The Empowered You and the Empowered Game. And he is a author who came in to speak at Craft when I was going through my own visibility journey. And when I saw his pie chart there, which showed those percentages that you just shared, it was a big aha moment for me because I was spending all of my time in that 10% bucket, the
Mm,
performance, and not doing anything around exposure for sure. And I thought I was doing okay with my image. So I think it was a big moment for me to realize, oh, okay, I need to shift my focus into exposure. And I use that in classes now with people because it's such a big moment. Most people do what I did. They pick that percentage bucket and say that's where all that big high percentage should be.
yeah.
And when I show them the actual graphic, they're all like, "Oh my gosh, I had no idea it was that important." And it really is, especially as you climb the ladder.
Well said. And of course, I've come across many, many people who say, why should I speak about myself? Let my work do the talking. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, that is not necessarily enough. But that leads me to the next question. How important is one's personal brand to developing exposure?
I mean, I think it's everything because there are so many decisions that are made based on your reputation, your image, whether or not they're going to give you new opportunities. So it is something to always think about and manage for yourself because if you don't manage it, someone else will,
Mm,
and they'll create a brand for you that may not be the one that you want. So I've been doing a lot more work on personal brand and doing workshops with companies because I want them to see that it's important that the company has a brand, but their individual employees and the teams need to have a brand as well so that they can
mm,
stand out.
mm. And do you think an individual's personal brand conflicts with a company's brand?
Actually, it's kind of interesting. Most of the time, they're very comparable to each other.
Mm,
There's some differences, obviously, in terms of like things that they like to do personally, or things that they have passion for that may be above and beyond what the company is doing. But most people align pretty well with the values of a company. Otherwise, I don't think they would stay too
mm,
long if they didn't. And so it's just a way to kind of help them move up beyond that one.
mhm,
I think when I left Craft, I realized how much I had embodied the everything about Craft. I had their their credibility, all of those things I had, and I just kind of used as I was out in the world, right? I'd say I worked from Craft and I had that. When I left the company, I had to figure out what is my brand? Like, what
mm,
is my new brand? I'm standing on my own with my own business, and I have to figure that out. And
mm,
so I'd like for other people, even though they're in a company, to understand what their brand is and how
mm,
they can stand out with that.
mm. Interesting. Very interesting. You also talk about how to handle introversion. Tell
Yes.
me a little bit about some of your tips.
So I am, somewhat an introvert, and I've learned the word now ambivert, which is kind of a combination of
Mm,
extrovert and introvert, depending on what you're doing. But as an introvert, I would go into a networking session of some sort with lots and lots of people and just about have a panic attack
mm,
because it's just so many people. It's overwhelming to an introvert. So some tips are to like think about just meeting two or three people. You don't
mm,
have to meet all of them at once.
mm,
You can go in and find a couple people, say hello, introduce yourself, and spend some time with them. In terms of like meetings, though, I think for managers who have introverts, what
mm,
I've been sharing with people lately is help them have an opportunity to speak, but don't call on them first because it gives them a little bit of a panic attack that they have to talk first and come up with something, and they need some time to think about that.
mhm,
So give them some time more at the end of the conversation and let them speak, and then reach out to them afterwards and tell them how glad you were that they spoke up and that you want to hear more from them because they need confidence sometimes. Especially if there's a lot of extroverts in the room, it feels overwhelming to an introvert to speak up
mm,
sometimes.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit now about coaching. And my first question to you is that after such a successful corporate career with Kraft Heinz, what made you decide that you wanted to become a coach?
I've loved leadership the whole time I was at Kraft. I got to be a part of a lot of different leadership programs. I started the Women at Kraft Employee Resource Group to help women in all of our locations really kind of position themselves for opportunities. And if you looked at my Kindle, you'd see how many leadership books I had on my Kindle at that time and still have. And I think it's just a passion area for me. But when I saw that I had an opportunity to make this a career and I could coach people and help them grow and improve and see what was possible for them, I leapt at it. I was so excited to do it when I left the company, and I had never started a business. I didn't know how to do all that, but I figured it out. And it's been really rewarding for me personally. But when I get to see them look at themselves differently and they've just built so much confidence in themselves, that just makes me so happy for them, and that I can play a small part in that. I'm happy to do that and just see them grow. It's so fun.
Fantastic. And I also wanted to ask you that, when I'm from the boomers generation, I remember when I started life in the large corporate world, coaching or mentoring was either done by a family elder or a senior colleague who took a liking for you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to get your perspective on how has coaching evolved that now people are willing to pay for advice.
Yeah. Well, I just wrote in a blog the other day and did a podcast on this, because when I first learned about coaching, it was for someone who wasn't doing well. It was like the person you called in at the last second to try to save someone who wasn't performing really well. And so that has definitely changed. And I think the younger generations now see it as a way to accelerate their career. And I'm so happy to see that and change the way that coaching is viewed. So they're coming out of the woodwork saying, I need a coach, I need to do this. And I'm so happy to see that. But I think over time, coaching has evolved as well. And it's become something that is really grown. It's got its own governance structure in like the International Coaching Federation, and all these types of things have come around to help support it. And I'm so excited to see that, because I think it has definitely been one of the most important things for me to change and transform.
Well said. My next question to you is that, given your incredible corporate background and all the things that you've done, how has your background supported your coaching philosophy, your style, and your values?
Wow, that's such a great question. I think I've always tried to live with the values of authenticity, and I've tried to focus on those same things when I coach people. And so I try to just be myself. It's funny. I was with someone yesterday who said, wow, you look just exactly like you do on YouTube, or, wherever you're at on social media. And so, I just try to be myself wherever I am. And I encourage other people to do that too. I think one of the biggest lessons I learned was to trust myself. And that was not something I did when I was at corporate. I listened to everyone else and their external validation of me, like getting a good rating or saying I did a good job was so important at that time. And after I left, I didn't have that anymore. So I really had to rely on myself. And I guess I would encourage all the listeners and watchers to try to find your own voice, find your own intuition and trust it, because it's trying to help you. And I think we tend to not listen to it. We listen to everybody else, especially in the world of social media. There's so many people talking and so many things out there to see. But if you just slow down and listen to yourself, it's actually helping you get to the right place for yourself, whatever that may look like for you.
Well said. My next question is, Susan, on a lot of people who we meet, work with in our journey. And all of us get influenced by people, whether it's family or colleagues or whoever else. And therefore, my question to you is that, how have you been shaped by people in your life, and how are they influencing you as a coach today?
I've had so many amazing people in my career and my life that have helped me. I think it started with my mom. She worked outside the home and, would take me to bring your daughter to work with day. And I got to see what that was like for her. And she was, one of the original people in the workforce as a woman, and all the trials and tribulations that brought with it. And so I learned a lot of things from her about resilience and, trying to change the status quo, if you will. But in terms of like work, I had some great managers that really helped to support me and bring me along and give me opportunities. And some of those people are still with me today. I call them like my little advisory board behind the scenes, who are always cheering me on and giving me opportunities to think about things differently, or people I can go to for advice. But in terms of coaching, like I had two amazing coaches and now a third that are really helping me think about coaching in a bigger way, right? There's so much to learn about coaching. I had no idea.
Mm.
I just thought I was going to learn how to coach when I went to coach school. And there's so much more after coach school to learn about it and all the nuances of leadership.
Correct.
And so I've just tried to be a sponge and take in as much as possible to be even better, for myself, but also for my clients. And it's a really amazing field. For anybody who's interested in coaching, it's such a great opportunity to help yourself and to help others.
Well said. And what would you say are some of your own unique perspectives that you bring into a coaching engagement?
A lot of people talk about how I focus on helping them play bigger and focus on possibilities. I think many times we're only allowed to see what we have around us sometimes, right? And
Mm.
social media is giving us a whole bigger view of the world. But in your own space, like you have people that you can model after, peers or managers. But what if you could do something even bigger than that? And
Mm.
that's what I want people to think about. I think so many people have dreams that they don't go after. They play small, they hide from them because they're scary or big. And I just want them to know that I believe in them, right? I try to give my belief in them for them to hold on to until they believe in themselves. And so that's really where I try to focus on those types of things. And I don't know what did that for me, but it definitely helped me grow as a leader. And I think that came from my coaches and managers along the way. And so I just want to be able to do that for somebody else so that they can really reach their potential and not hold themselves back.
Wonderful. Thank you. My next question is that, you must have worked with a lot of senior leaders and a lot of emerging leaders. Uh, where or what do you see is the difference between coaching a senior leader and an emerging leader?
I mean, senior leader has probably a lot more challenging problems to deal with.
Mhm.
They may be leading an entire department or organization, and so their challenges are just different. But at the core, many of them have the same types of challenges. Like they may be insecure, they may be struggling with trying to figure out how to do things in the best way or how to lead their teams. So in that way, they have similar things that they're dealing with, but just on a grander scale at a
Mhm.
senior level. And, depending on the type of person I'm coaching, they may have a board to answer to. They may have, an entire organization of people globally. And that brings a lot of other challenges. You have a
Mhm.
lot of stress and handling all of that kind of stuff where a junior leader may not have all of those types of things. So it's really fascinating. I think as a coach you have to kind of go to wherever that person is and help them and support them in the best way,
Mhm.
for whatever it is they need. So I try to look at them in that way, recognizing and having been in corporate that there are definitely different challenges at each level.
Mhm. So I have time for two more questions. My next question to you,
Sure.
Susan, is about the young millennials and the Gen Z leaders. And I've often said that these young leaders who are coming into positions of authority have brought in a breath of fresh air into most organizations. I want to get your thoughts on what are some of the areas they may need to be coached in.
Mm. I love this. I have two of those in my house with me. So
Thank you.
I get to see it every day.
Mm.
But what I've seen is that they really want to work for a company that has a purpose. They really want to make sure that they're valued and appreciated. And, I grew up in the Gen X, time frame. And so for me, like just as an example, if someone offered me more work, I saw that as a good thing.
Mm.
I'd say, oh, this is great. You're going to see me in a different way. You're going to promote me.
Mm.
But they actually have a different perspective, which I love. They're like, I'd love to do more work. Are you going to pay me more?
Mm.
And are you going to allow me to work, 8 to 5 and not work a bunch of extra hours like I did? And so I think they're forcing people in corporate to think differently about what it means with these generations that are coming up.
Mhm.
Because if we don't adopt to some of the things that maybe we have done incorrectly in the past,
Mhm.
even though it seemed like the right thing to do, like working a million hours, I just don't know how those people are going to continue to stay in corporate. So I think there has to be some adoption of, there's a lot of talk about the 4-day work week and those types of things. They want to be able to work in corporate and have a side career.
Mhm.
And a lot of them, a lot of my friends are doing that.
Mhm.
And so I think it's possible. We just need to be open to different ideas than maybe we've had in the past and try to look at what they're bringing and what they're offering because they're so smart. I just love talking to my own kids sometimes and hearing what they
Absolutely.
say. And I'm just
Yes.
like beaming with pride about what they talk about.
Absolutely. And you're so right. I mean, my 37 and 35-year-old, they don't live here with me, but exactly what you have said is what I've seen both of them as well. And my
Mhm.
last question to you, Susan, and this is for the thousands of people who will listen to our conversation. Based on your own amazing journey, what would you say are 3 lessons you would want our viewers and listeners to take away from your journey and our conversation?
Wow, it's hard to distill down to 3 sometimes, but I'd say the first one is don't be afraid to ask for help. That
Hmm.
was something I was not good at.
Yeah.
I thought I had to do everything by myself, and,
Correct.
you can move way faster if you ask for help from others. The second is, as I mentioned earlier, trusting yourself. I
Hmm.
think that was one that I just, did not do at all, and I really would encourage you to slow down and just listen to
Hmm.
things that you have in your life that you want to make decisions on. It will help you. I promise
Hmm.
it will help
Hmm.
you. And the third is look at possibilities. I think there are so many different things you could do in the world that
Hmm.
really help you grow as a leader, but also how can you give back to others and help them to be a mentor, help other people, bring them along. There's so many people who don't always think about that and maybe just focus on themselves. And I
Hmm.
think there's an opportunity to help everybody. There's so many people who could use your help and your guidance from your own experience. So try to find ways to do that.
Wonderful. And on that note, Susan, and your 3 amazing lessons, which is ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Completely agree with you. Second, you said was trust yourself. And the third one, which is so powerful, look at possibilities because there are so many different opportunities for one to do different things, for one to be able to give back. Thank you for speaking to me about your own journey. Thank you for talking to me about your book, The Visibility Factor. Thank you also for speaking to me about so many different aspects of coaching. Thank you again and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.